Coming up on our Finding Better podcast, I have Ann Mracek with me. She is the author of a book called Unpacking the Attic, A Path to Healing Your Inner Child. Amazing, amazing stuff. And this applies to all of us. It applies to all of us. And she also has a YouTube channel that she started called My Best Friends Live in the Woods. You don't want to miss this. Please join us. Please subscribe. Please share this. And here we go. Hello, 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 and welcome back to our Finding Better podcast. My name is John Suzuki, and I am your host. And this is where we share real life experiences and wisdom of things where we've been there and done that in terms of finding better in our own lives, so that perhaps you can take some of those lessons and apply them to your own life. And, we have found that sometimes the best way to success is to copy it. So today, I have a very special person. Her name is Ann Mracek, and she's all about breaking the cycle of emotional triggers. Ooh, emotional triggers and old broken relationships to move forward free and empowered. And a lot of you folks know that's what we're all about here, right? Finding better and helping you get there. Ann hosts a YouTube channel called My Best Friends Live in the Woods. You need to go check it out. It's beautiful. And she's also the author of the newly released book as of yesterday or
Yeah,
today. Yeah,
yeah,
right. Called
yeah.
Unpacking the Attic, A Path to Healing Your Inner Child. And again, it is now on Amazon. Ann, welcome to Finding Better. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, John. I'm really thrilled to be here. This is fun.
I have been excited to have this conversation for a long, long time. And we waited. We waited until
Yes,
your book was out. And
the
so
book was out.
this is fresh off the press. And so let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about your book. We can talk about your YouTube channel a little bit later, which is beautiful. But I'm really interested in what you do in terms of talking to people about unpacking the attic. First I want to talk about that. Then I want to talk about how that relates to healing your inner child and how
Yeah,
that helps people move
yes.
forward in their lives. So let's talk about unpacking the attic first. What does that mean, and where did that come from?
So it all began when my parents announced they were moving into an assisted living apartment in 2 weeks.
In
And
two
they
weeks.
wanted
Okay.
me to,
Oh, wow.
yeah, they gave me two
That's
weeks
tough.
notice. And they
Yeah.
wanted me to empty their house. Now, keep in mind, this was a 3-story, 6,000 square foot home with 54 years accumulated stuff. Well, needless to say, it took a lot
15,
longer than 2
15
weeks. It
dumpsters.
took
Yeah,
long enough to
yeah.
write a novel.
Okay.
So I found that as I was going through this process of helping them empty their home and move into their assisted living apartment, that literally, as items from my childhood were being brought out of the attic, it was triggering memories and suppressed childhood trauma that I had
Ooh.
long forgotten about.
Oh, whoa.
And as I
Yeah.
saw each of these different items coming out of the house to either be donated, gifted, recycled, I was almost like a near death experience, but without the dying part, which was darn convenient. But it really did transport me emotionally, mentally, back in time to my childhood, to things that I had long blocked and
And
forgotten. And
and
it
and
brought
and
to
and
light,
I would imagine a lot of good things and a lot of bad things, right?
oh, both. Yeah, there was
Yeah.
a
I
lot.
mean,
I, I think
yeah.
really an equal balance, inspiration, and also bringing into light traumas, feelings of being
Hmm.
unworthy, unloved, insignificant. I felt invisible as a child, unsupported, abandoned. Many things came to light, and it also brought to light some broken relationships that really had never been dealt with or healed. And I
Whoa.
decided to have the courage to look back, to feel these things, and to try to reframe them now with adult perspective, so that those underlying childhood emotional responses could be rewritten into a bigger context that I didn't have access to as a child. Children see the world as them centered, me centered. Like, I must be a
Sure,
bad child.
sure.
I must have caused this, right?
Yep.
They can't possibly comprehend or know all of the complexities of the adults and the dysfunction that's going on. They're just the innocent caught in this
Right,
ping pong
right, right,
match between the
right.
adults, right?
And a
And
lot of
so,
times it's my fault. A lot of times,
well, the
right?
child always thinks it's my fault.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's their instant response. I'm a bad
right.
child. I did something wrong to cause this. And that triggers a lot of low self-esteem, feelings of being unworthy, unlovable, um, inadequate. And yet, if you allow yourself to remember, to feel, and then to reframe it with the adult understanding, put it in context, and a main component to give love and compassion to the adults who were responsible for those experiences.
Whoa. Okay. And this is part of the reframing,
It's
right? A
it's the
big part of the
refrain.
reframing.
And I have
Yeah.
found that retrospection is a powerful healing elixir. And our society really doesn't give time for or value
No, we don't.
retrospection, the chance to look back and reframe so that now we can look forward, healed, free, not responding in the childhood emotional trigger that we have been programmed to do.
And that's still inside of us, right?
It's still
That's
inside of
still
you.
inside of us.
Everyone
Yeah.
has that
Yeah.
little child still sitting there with terror in their eyes.
Yeah.
And yet we can be our own parent. We can go back in time. We can explain to that inner child the bigger circumstance, the bigger situation. We can explain to them that they were not the causation of those experiences, and love them. Tell them, I'm sorry you experienced that, but here's an adult understanding of the situation.
So, okay.
Go ahead.
So can you give us an example of a
Yes.
reframing of a
Yes.
situation that you discovered, as you're going through this process, and how you reframe that and how you turn that from something bad into something good?
So I found my grandfather's pipe.
Okay, folks, if you can't
Literally,
see, that's a pipe. Yeah, okay, that's a pipe.
my
Okay.
grandfather's pipe,
Yep.
literally in my parents' attic. And it triggered a memory that I had blocked and suppressed decades. I remember my parents taking me to his two-family flat. It was winter, took off coats, hung them up. And the first thing he said to me, and the only two words I ever remember him saying to me, was sit down, as he pointed to the red velvet couch. So I sat there, and he took my parents into his kitchen. And as I sat, I began to smell food cooking and hear conversations and laughter. And after, I don't know how long, it seemed like forever to the tiny child, he and my parents came back into the living room. He sat down in his big green overstuffed chair, stared out the window, and began puffing on this pipe till the room was filled with cherry wood smoke. Still smells like cherry wood smoke.
Hmm.
And I remember all I wanted to do was sit in his lap. And I couldn't understand why Pop Pop, which is what I call him, wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't hold me. And so I translated that in my 3-year-old mind to, I am not lovable. I am a bad child. I am not worthy of being loved. I am not worthy of being held. And that stuck with me. Well, when I found this, I realized I was still carrying that recording. as part of who I am. And I remembered my mother saying, Pop lost his luster for life when your grandmother died. Now, I don't really remember her. I was tiny when she passed. She died in her 50s with sugar diabetes. But as an adult, I began to think about him with compassion. And I began to understand that it had nothing to do with that 3-year-old redhead sitting
Right.
on the
Right.
couch. He was still in so much grief that his heart was shut down.
Oh,
He didn't have room for a toddler
right.
in his heart
Right.
because he had shut himself down. So then I began to remember a trip that my husband and I took to China. Now, stick with me. You'll see why this is relevant.
Okay, sure.
It's not random. And we
Yep.
were walking through the vendor stalls in Beijing down these alleyways. And there were these tables stacked up with what looked to me like paper doll things, pictures of houses, pictures of like new cars, pictures of washers and dryers, all these random things. And so I asked our tour guide, is this for children to play with, like paper dolls? And oh, no, no, no. Relatives buy these for their deceased because in our religion, we believe that when you pray with intent over an image of something and then you light it, that the smoke rises to the spirit of your deceased that you've been praying for and manifests that thing in the spirit world for them.
Oh,
So they were
wow. Okay.
gifting their deceased with these new cars and new homes and
Washing
whatever, right?
machines. Yeah. Hmm.
Washing machines. So, and apparently the merchants of Beijing have made an entire industry of this. So
Okay.
I decided to write Pop a letter. And at first, all I wanted to write down was how angry I was and demand an apology. But the more I thought about it, what I ended up writing was this: I'm sorry you were broken.
Oh,
And you missed out on one of the best treasures life can afford you, and that is to laugh with your grandchild. And we both deserve better, but I forgive you. And I put that letter in a green ceramic bowl to represent his green chair, and I lit it. And as that smoke rose, I was completely downloaded with a wash of spirit. I went into full goosebumps, and the release that I felt in my spirit was immense. It
that
was
is amazing.
transformative for me.
There
And
is,
that is just one of the many, that's one chapter of 50 in
sure,
Unpacking the
sure.
Attic. But I wanted to share that transformative experience that I went through in in real time with the world, with my people that I love, right? So I found that it is truly possible to reframe those triggered old memories and to find the
Sure.
compassion and the love for the people that were the adults in that scenario and to move forward. And I really do feel released from that old scenario because now I have an understanding. I have it in context. And I
You
have
know,
truly loved and forgiven him for the first time.
there that little story that you just shared with us, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yes,
Let me try to a couple of things that I just wanted to say. First of all, it was the experience that you went through that had such a massive impact on your life. Your grandpa never meant to hurt you. He
right.
never meant to. He was just in a place where he couldn't deal with it, where he was just locked out. I mean, love was locked out of his life for a while because
Mhm.
he lost your grandma.
Right.
And it's you take a situation like that. I think at least I can't imagine that you would ever have uncovered that without
Right.
finding your grandpa's pipe,
Without
right?
finding the pipe, I would have continued to have that memory blocked.
Right, right,
And
exactly.
without having the courage to allow myself to relive it and to feel it, I would have never healed from it.
So that's the second part, right?
There's two parts.
The first part, actually, I got three. The first
Mhm.
part is identifying it, right?
Yes, right.
And finding a way to and sometimes it's you found your grandpa's pipe. Sometimes it's a smell. I have found that
Mhm.
smells are
Yeah.
massively triggering, and but you just never know where it's going to come from.
Mhm.
And but the second part is consider it a blessing and not a curse, right?
Right, right,
Consider it
right.
as a message of an opportunity, of something that says, "Oh my gosh, this is something. Now, what do I do with it?" Now, if you're like me, if it's bad, I just go get out of my life, right? But what you're saying is, look at it, be curious about it, and see
Right.
what you can do with it, and see if you can reframe it. And the third part that I just want to mention was the forgiveness part of it. The forgiveness part of it. I think that, at least in my experience, anything that has happened that's been bad, that's involved people.
Yeah.
um, I had a gentleman on my show about 3 weeks ago, and
Uh-huh.
he's a pastor, and he
Uh-huh.
said, and we talked about forgiveness. He says, "John, I'm so glad you brought that up." I said, "Yeah, so talk about it for a second." He says, "A lot of people think the parting of the Red Sea is a miracle." He says, "Forgiveness and forgiving others is a greater miracle than the parting of the
Yeah.
Red Sea."
It
He
is.
says it is transformative, and you've been through it, I've been through it, and it's one of those things where you have to give yourself the opportunity to try it. And it's
Right.
so hard, but once you've done it, like you said, it is just so releasing, and
Yeah.
and when you forgive somebody, it takes that burden and that rot inside of you, and it just says, "Here, I'm giving it back to you."
Mhm.
I'm not carrying this burden anymore. So that's wonderful. I love that story. And you got 50 stories like that in your book. That's amazing.
There's 50 of them. Yes. Well, actually, there's
That's
more than that.
amazing.
There's 50 chapters, but many of the chapters have multiple stories.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
sadly.
And it's really, there've been so many things that have, I mean, I'm probably going to start crying over what I'm about to say. But I'm a grandparent now,
It's
and
okay.
um, and which means I have kids,
Right?
right?
One would
And
assume.
and yeah, it kind of works in a progression, right? And so, I just think back, and there are a lot of things, of experiences that I've had that have triggered my memories of things I've done to my kids, both
Yeah.
good and bad.
Uh-huh.
But
Sure.
the ones that really hurt are the bad ones,
Yeah.
obviously, right? Because
Right.
but at the same time, learning to forgive myself has
Yes.
been something that
Yes.
sometimes is a struggle. I think that's the hardest one of all,
Yeah.
is
It can be.
forgiving yourself, and just hoping and praying. I mean, they ended up, they're beautiful children. They're
They
adults now,
survived
34.
you.
They survived me, and they grew up to be the kinds of people I want to be when I grow up. And
Yes.
it's just amazing. But being able to go through those experiences that you went through as you were unpacked. I mean, what an innocuous experience. I mean, just kind of an off the wall natural thing that happens, and
Yes.
yet that process brought you to where we are, where you're sharing um, your experiences with the world,
And
which is
I never
wonderful.
initially thought I would share. I
Hmm.
really wrote this in real time as I was going through, literally unpacking my parents' home, as a healing process for my own soul. and I put it in a file cabinet. And it was literally there for 8 years.
Hmm.
My father passed away. Um, and then in the middle of the night, I remember this just like it was yesterday, 3 a.m. I feel like my angel woke me up.
Hmm.
And I heard in my soul, the title of your book is Unpacking the Attic. And I was like,
You're like, what?
thank you. What book? I didn't remember it.
Yeah.
And it's like, the book, it's in the file cabinet. It's
That's
time.
amazing. That's
It's
amazing.
time. Share it. It's time. I had never planned on sharing it. So, okay. So I woke my husband. I told him, you're never going to believe what just happened. He's like, it's three
Yeah,
o'clock
yeah.
in the
Wake
morning.
up, wake up.
Wake up.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So he's used to that though with me. So the next morning I woke up and I'm checking my email. And there is an email in my inbox from the Steve Harrison Publishing Company.
Wow. Wow.
Never heard of
Wow.
them. And my husband's like, okay, you have no choice. You have to call them up. So
Yeah.
I called, I talked to
Yeah.
Joe, who I know you know, terrific.
Yep.
And we had about an hour long conversation. And I told him I'd written this thing just for me and so forth. He says, well, read me the introduction in the first chapter, which I did. And he was like, oh, Ann, I am crying. I think you need to publish this.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said, you need to share. It's time. So that was last January. It is now 9 months later. So I have birthed the book.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. As of yesterday. That's amazing.
Yes.
That is amazing. And congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank
Because
you.
I'll tell you, folks, everybody has a book in them. In my
Yes.
mind, everybody has multiple books, including you, right? And
Yes.
one thing about me is that I believe that we all have three careers. The first is to learn and go to school. The second is
Yes.
to earn a living for
Yes.
yourself and your family, and the third is to return and give back.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
they're overlapping, obviously, but I, you, the process that you went through was a process of it's time to give back. It's
It is
time to
time to
give
give
back.
back. Right.
And
And it was so interesting because that's the phrase that my angel used. She said, it's time.
mm-hmm,
You need to share.
mm-hmm, yeah,
And
yeah.
I had
And you
gone
don't
through
ignore
the
those things. You don't ignore those
no,
things,
I
right?
don't. I
Yeah,
take them
yeah,
very much as a soul purpose.
yeah,
And
yeah.
hurt people. Healed people, heal people, right?
Say that one more time.
Hurt people, hurt people.
Hurt people hurt people. Yep,
Healed
yep,
people, heal people.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
had
That's
gone through that
amazing.
healing process. So it was time for me to offer that.
Yep, yep.
Mhm.
That's wonderful. That is wonderful. This is, there's a lot to unpack here. Like I said, the three steps that I got out of this in our conversation is one, when you have those episodes or you have those experiences that trigger good feelings or bad feelings,
Right,
and I have gone from running away from the bad feelings to really prioritizing them and saying, you know
right.
what, these are just as important as the good ones,
They are.
right? And
They are.
examining them and reframing them and trying to figure out, because as like you said, as a child, it's all about us. We don't know anything, right? We
You don't
don't we
have
don't
any
understand,
context.
and we don't know what consequences are. We don't. It's just oh, um, they must not like me. I must not be likable or lovable. So there's something wrong with
Exactly.
me.
Right.
And we all have a lot to unpack, but take it as an opportunity, right? And then
Yes.
and then
Yes.
when you find that there are people involved with it, the hardest thing in the world is to find a way to forgive them, but understanding that you're letting them go.
it releases their hold over you.
Yes. Yes. That's a
They're
much
no
better way of
longer
putting
getting
it.
right.
That's right.
They're they're no longer getting free rent in your soul.
Ooh.
Right?
Whoa. Okay. Got it. Got it. Yeah. Yeah, you're throwing them out. You're throwing them out. You're
Yeah,
evicting them. That I love
right.
that. I
In the best possible way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know what, Ann, I'll tell you something. The reason why I started this whole podcast to begin with is because our world is in need of a lot of healing, a lot of
Yes,
healing.
it is.
And your story has resonated with me so much from the standpoint that let us help heal.
Right.
One of my favorite songs is from Michael Jackson, Heal the World.
Oh,
And
right, of
right, you
course.
remember that
Yeah,
song? It's a
right.
long time,
Sure,
but I love that. I
sure.
love the spirit of that song, and I love the spirit of what you're doing. It's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Um, Listen, this has been amazing. You have anything else you want to share with my audience?
Well, if you have young ones,
Yes.
the YouTube channel, which is My Best Friends Live in the Woods, is actually designed as a resource for parents, teachers, caregivers to teach young people mindfulness and compassion in a fun, interactive way. It's not do this because it's right. No, no, no. The little forest animals, Albert raccoon, mother skunk, all of the creatures of the forest, interact in a loving, caring way so that they teach by example. And each chapter focuses on a specific aspect of compassion and mindfulness. For example, is bullying ever acceptable? Or living in community, or forgiveness. There's so many. And after each chapter, there is a discussion and questions in order to help encourage meaningful conversation and then to relate those teachings to your own life. So my little granddaughter was the impetus of sharing that. She said, Grammy, you need to share Albert with the rest of the world. And that's what inspired me to create the YouTube channel. So again, it's an opportunity to share healing in a fun, loving way. And I think that's really my soul's purpose.
So,
So it's
folks,
not only the children of the world, but it's the children within,
which is all of us. And so,
which is all of
and
us.
and I
Right.
am going to. I haven't checked that out. I am absolutely going to check it out. And folks, just something so you know. Anne just started her YouTube channel about 7 months ago, and she has almost 50,000 subscribers. That is meteoric success. So there's something awesome to be seen in there. So it's called My Best Friends Live in the Woods, and that's her YouTube channel. Check it out, and it might help. I'm going to check it out. I can't wait, and I'm going to have my daughter and my son check it out as well. So wonderful. So we know about your YouTube channel. My Best Friends Live in the Woods. We know about your book, Unpacking the Attic, A Path to Healing Your Inner Child. Wow, what an amazing story you have, and what an amazing thing that you're doing and sharing all this with the world.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, so with that, if folks want to learn more about you, do you have a website?
I do. It's very simple. Ann at annmracek.com.
Okay, so Ann Mracek, it's spelled ANN,
Mhm.
and it's MRACEK.
CEK.
Thank you. I spelt it out phonetically, and I'm like, oh
Right,
no, I
right.
forgot. Mracek. Wonderful, Ann Mracek. So,
Oh,
Ann, thank you for joining me. Thank you for sharing this part of your life. Thank you. Amazing, amazing. And I'm sure that everybody is taking something away from this that will kind of help transform what they're doing from where they are to where they're going. So with that, folks, share this, please. And if you like this, subscribe because we've got lots and lots more to share with you. So with that, I love you. God bless you. And thank you again so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And yeah, and well, if you'll come back, I would love to have you back sometime. And
I would
we'll
be
go from there.
delighted. I think we really connect. I'd had such a good time.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, all right. And folks, we'll see you next time. Bye.